Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media.
Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us back to the area around Island Park, to an unincorporated town called Last Chance in Fremont County, Idaho. This area is high elevation, around 6,200 feet above sea level, and basks in 3 times the annual rainfall of surrounding altitudes. The Island Park caldera pushed this area to higher elevations, and during one of its eruptions, spewed ash that covered the land from the Mississippi River to southern California. It is one of the world's largest volcanoes, and is the source of the geysers and geothermal wonders. The elk, deer, and moose navigate the hot springs and mud pots, oblivious to the risks. Predators such as bobcats, black bears, coyotes, cougars, and grizzly bears patrol the land, limiting populations and keeping them healthy. The dense stands of lodgepole pine and Douglas fir provide shelter in snowy weather, while quaking aspens, black locusts, and a few species of maple trees provide fall color and beauty. The many ponds and springs of the area provide water and places for berry bushes to grow. A few miles south of Island Park is where Last Chance is seated. It is the kind of insular town that if you blink as you drive down the highway, you might miss it. It is called Last Chance because it's 40 miles from West Yellowstone and the entrance to Yellowstone National Park. On the evening of June 6, 2024, a couple whom we'll refer to as Phil and Julie were pulling up to their home with a new batch of groceries. They had the usual staples of bread and butter, but one of the unusual items in their grocery haul was a shotgun. Phil had brought it along apparently on a hunch, and one thing you shouldn't do is ignore your gut when it comes to grizzlies. As Phil was loading his arms with groceries, he headed toward the front door when he heard Julie scream out. His head snapped to the end of the driveway, and he took in the dark outline of a grizzly bear just as it began stepping toward Julie. Knowing he didn't have much time to react, Phil dropped the groceries and scrambled for the shotgun in the back of the vehicle. Now, Phil and Julie were no greenhorns when it came to grizzlies. The entire community has formed a series of social media sites to help visitors and residents keep in mind that they live in bear country. The local ranger station gives out bear spray in an attempt to be proactive in preventing bear attacks, and the locals support educational events to learn about how to avoid them. The area residents work hard to form a realistic balance between living with the bears while insisting they are safe from the bears who cross the line. As Phil lifted the shotgun to his shoulder, the grizzly closed in on Julie. With only a few yards separating the bear and Julie, Phil fired a single shot that shuddered the bear. The round had a deterring effect on the grizzly, and it veered off. The bear disappeared into the forest surrounding the property, leaving the couple shaken but uninjured. Now, having dealt with the threat from the charging grizzly, Julie and Phil finished unloading their vehicle while keeping a wary eye out for the bear. There's no source indicating whether they reported the incident to wildlife officers or not, but given the bear had fled, they may not have reported it without knowing the outcome. The following day, the Idaho Fish and Game received a phone call from a concerned citizen. They called in to report a dead grizzly lying by the road and requested the officers investigate. An investigative team converged on the location of the dead grizzly and examined its carcass. Based on the entry wound, they could tell the shot was fired in self-defense. Word got around regarding the grizzly's aggressive behavior toward Julie and Phil. After a review of the events, the officers decided that Phil's actions were justified, and he was not cited for any violation about the bear's death. The bear's carcass did reveal a few important details the investigators utilized. It was found to be an otherwise healthy young male grizzly. There was no animal carcass cached nearby, and the bear was not acting in defense of itself or cubs. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, linked below, will give you ad-free early access to our episodes, and the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. In prior episodes, we've discussed that male bears, particularly young male bears, are more likely to attack humans than sows or females. The yearling male involved in this attack may have been driven from more competitive territories and was searching for a territory of his own. As populations increase and sows with cubs crowd closer to human development, young males may create many problems as they cannot defend optimal territory and may not be accepted near a sow with new cubs, regardless of food supply. Over the last year, there have been 3 other incidents in Idaho where grizzlies were killed by people defending their lives, all of which are episodes on this channel. All 3 incidents occurred near Island Park, indicating that grizzlies there demonstrate a more aggressive attitude toward people than in nearby areas. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Do you think bear spray would have prevented this attack, or was this young male grizzly already headed for a disastrous outcome? Was the grizzly curious, or was it behaving in a predatory manner? Is the loss of a grizzly a significant concern, or have grizzlies recovered enough to accept the death of individuals in these types of circumstances? I'll gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it.
Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the untamed frontier of central Idaho. The headwaters of the Middle Fork of the Salmon River is sparsely populated by people even now. The steep, decomposed granite mountains are covered with pine and fir trees and low-growing berry bushes like blueberry, huckleberry, elderberry, and raspberry. These berry bushes provide seasonal nutrients, sugars, and minerals to animals ranging from chipmunks to grizzly bears. Mountain bluebirds stand out as they flit through the green scrub bush that screen the privacy of the deer and the elk that roam the valleys. This area is extremely rugged and very isolated, but in June of 1886, it was the kind of country that beckoned to tough frontier people. Old Ike was one of the most successful bear hunters in the Rocky Mountains and called central Idaho his home. With ranches and farms springing up across the newly formed state, the demand for a bear hunter was at an all-time high. Many of the ranchers and farmers in Idaho had to raise their food and hope for enough to sell to others. Bears didn't bother following the customs of human society and would simply kill and eat whatever livestock they would need to survive. That's when Old Ike came into the picture. He would study the bear and its patterns and carefully set up a confrontation he knew he would win. He would get a nice grizzly rug or hide and some meat and some very useful bear tallow out of the deal, and they would also pay him for his services. There were safer jobs a man could do, but most of these jobs are taken by men who aren't brave enough to be a bear bounty hunter. Old Ike was a hunting legend as he single-handedly killed around 100 grizzly bears, bringing safety to livestock herds and prosperity to ranches and farms throughout Idaho. He's been contacted about a huge grizzly up on the untamed Salmon River headwaters that is terrorizing local ranches. Old Ike and a few young partners head toward the area and in a few days are speaking with the ranch owners about the problem bears in the area. Most ranchers feel like they can handle the black bears of the area, but this giant grizzly bear that calls the area around Dagger Falls his home is far too fierce for them to handle. Old Ike agrees with his partners to head out and find the giant grizz and bring a little frontier justice to him. As Old Ike and his group arrive in the area, they survey the lay of the land. Being familiar with grizzly bears, Old Ike knows that the bears will use certain resources at certain times and other resources at other times. And this early in the summer, the bears will be hunting deer fawns and elk calves along the mountain meadows. Predators including wolves, cougars, and bears use the transition and cover between forests and meadows to sneak upon their prey. Ike knows this and begins searching meadow edges for bear tracks and scat. The hunters are about 2 weeks into their stalk when they come across some huge and very promising tracks along a small creek. They are definitely grizzly bear tracks, and big enough to be the tracks of the dominant bear in the area. Old Ike is certain it is the bear he's looking for. The hunters set up a few baits and traps to see if they can lure the big bear into the open, and it isn't long before they are seeing some interesting progress. They find the bear's tracks leaving a marsh and follow him for several miles. At the far end of the meadow, they see the big bear striding across the edge of the trees. The men hustle to a point at which they can intercept the bear, and their hard work pays off with a good shot. Old Ike follows his instincts and is rewarded with a good solid hit on the giant bruin. When shooting a large bear, the hunter will ideally strike a bone of some sort. The most damaging shots will break the bones of the shoulder, legs, or hips. This will keep the bear from going too far too fast and will hopefully keep it from killing you. Old Ike's shot passed through the ribs and created a nice blood trail, but definitely didn't break anything structural, like a bone. The men trailed the bear until its blood trail led into a patch of very thick, small trees. This type of tree patch is called a jack pine patch and consists of shorter pine trees typically under about 8 feet in height. The branches grow wide and low and create an environment that is easy to move through, but very difficult to see even medium distances in. Old Ike knows how bears and other animals use jack pine stands to conceal themselves or their escape routes, so he slowly follows each drop of blood into the stand, moving from drop to drop and splatter to splatter. The old man is not what he used to be in his youth, as his vision and hearing are losing their sharpness. He can see the larger blood spatters easily, but misses some of the smaller drops. His hearing still picks up the lower loud tones, like a growl, but doesn't quite get the higher pitched sounds anymore, like small twigs snapping just a few yards to his right. Unbeknownst to Old Ike, the wily grizzly bear has set up a trap to catch his hunter. Being a predator himself, the bear knows if he walks in a straight line and circles back to within just a few yards of his old trail, his hunter will walk right in front of him without knowing how close the bear is, and that is exactly what the giant bear does. As Old Ike follows the blood sign and tracks further into the jack pine stand, he incrementally follows a path that leads him right in front of the concealed bear. Just as Old Ike walks past the bear, the giant Bruin leaps from its hiding spot and shoves the hunter to the ground. This bear is so large that the frail and gaunt old man is no match for him and thumps on the ground. The enraged and wounded grizzly next opens up its enormous mouth and bites into Old Ike's chest. The enraged and wounded grizzly next opens its enormous mouth and bites into Old Ike's chest. As the bear closes its jaws, his canine teeth puncture the skin and penetrate Old Ike's ribcage. Then the bear crushes the old man's chest with a single bite. Old Ike's hunting partners can hear the yelling and growling coming from the jack pine patch and rush in to see what's going on. As they approach, they can see the bear standing over Old Ike and run the bear off so they can help their friend. Shooting at the bear as it stood over Ike could have wounded or killed their friend, and the bear fled the attack scene quickly anyway. Old Ike is in bad shape, and he's struggling to breathe. His face is wrinkled in pain, and his color is fading as he's losing the battle for his life. In only a few minutes, his breath shortens, and he dies from the injuries imparted by the grizzly bear. Old Ike's legacy as a bear bounty hunter is cemented into Idaho history. With his passing, and many farmers and ranchers say he brought stability and safety to the frontier. But today there are some who say he decimated a species he may have misunderstood. What do you think? Do you think Old Ike performed a necessary service to the area farms and ranches? Or do you think he did more damage than he helped? As you post your response, I want to make sure to remind you that if you...
Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to a familiar place on this channel, and too close to home for me personally. We're discussing a grizzly attack which happened near Sawtell Peak, just north of Island Park, Idaho. The Montana border is a stone's throw away, since it is the watershed on the next hill to the west. When you think of high country, pictures of this kind of area may come to mind, given its elevation is between 7,000 and 8,000 feet, depending on where you're located on the mountain. At the foot of Sawtell Peak lies uninterrupted miles of pine, fir, and spruce tree forest, and through it winds the Henry's Fork of the Snake River and the world-class trout fly fishing it offers. Common animals here include moose, elk, and mule deer. The predators here include bobcat, black bear, coyotes, cougars, and wolves, but the ever-increasing grizzly bear population is what is the focus of our discussion today. About 15 miles east is the boundary of Yellowstone National Park, and given nothing but mountains and forest lay between here and there, it isn't difficult to imagine grizzlies wandering out of the park in search of food or their own territory to claim. In fact, the year of 2015 had been a bumper crop for bear complaints. The Fremont County Sheriff's Office had fielded numerous calls from concerned citizens reporting grizzly sightings throughout the summer. The Idaho Fish and Game had to work in conjunction with federal agents to put down a 25-year-old male grizzly who had been breaking into outbuildings around Island Park recently. They said that judging by his age and appearance, he was no longer able to forage for his typical fare. He was led into human areas by competition over prime areas and by starvation. By fall time, archery season rolls around and elk and deer hunters dust off their camouflage and bows to sneak through the woods to try to bag some meat for the winter. To be successful at archery hunting, you not only have to be stealthy, you also have to move silently, or at least quietly, if you want to stay undetected by wary prey animals, and even then it isn't guaranteed. The senses of hearing and smell of deer and elk have adeptly detected predators before they can present any danger to their lives for untold eons. The success of the species is proof of that theory. In the early morning hours of Monday, August 31st, 2015, 55-year-old Mike Adams was putting the sneak on some elk on the slopes of Sawtell Peak. The prior days had brought a heavy rain, and the creek nearby was loudly babbling, drowning out any other noises. Mike was an avid bow hunter and lived in Idaho Falls, a few hours south along the freeway. In years when Labor Day falls toward the end of the first week of September, Idaho bow hunters can enjoy an opening day weekend without the holiday crowds, and this is exactly what Mike was doing. Given his relatively remote location, he likely had the entire mountain all to himself, minus whatever other archery hunters who may have been around. Now Mike was no greenhorn, nor was he unaware of the possibility of running into the area's grizzly bears. He was left-handed, so he placed his bear spray holster on his left hip and his .44 Magnum pistol on his right one. As he quietly slipped through the shadows of the dark timber, there is no way Mike could have known that he was getting danger close to a deer carcass that a hungry mama grizzly had cached and was now protecting with every bit of the power and fury her species is known for. A sudden snap drew Mike's attention away from scanning the timber for the elk he was trailing. As he swung his head in the direction of the snap, his vision was filled with the terrifying sight of a massive sow grizzly closing in on him from his left and only a few yards away. His heart sank in his chest even further when he saw her 3 cubs trailing not far behind. Before Mike had so much as let out a grunt, the sow had latched her powerful jaws onto his left forearm. The impact of her attack had knocked him around, and he couldn't reach his bear spray across his body with his free right hand. The only thing he could do was reach for his pistol. As the angry sow jostled Mike around and tore into his flesh on his forearm, he attempted to pull his pistol from his hip holster. He could feel the immense pressure of her jaws on his bones, and her 2-inch teeth painfully tore nickel-sized holes through his flesh. Each time she bit, she pulled him toward her and tossed her head, which took him off balance. Then she would bite into his forearm in a different place. Each time he grabbed for his pistol, she would jerk him around, making his attempts at gripping his pistol impossible. After several seconds, Mike was able to grasp the pistol grip of his .44 Magnum, and from point-blank range fired off several shots in quick succession. The sow and her cubs scampered through the brush in a scattered retreat, frightened away by the repeated roar of the pistol. For a few seconds after watching the sow and her cubs flee, Mike was stunned and tried to collect himself. He was certain at least a few of his rounds had hit the sow, especially given she was biting on his other arm. His forearm was bleeding and painful, but the bear only managed to bite him there, though she had done so several times. She had missed swatting him with her paws, otherwise his injuries would have been much more severe, if not fatal. Mike was by himself when he set out, and knew there was no one nearby to call on for help. He did have one possible way to reach out, though, and he used his right hand to retrieve his cell phone from his pocket. Mike pressed the button on it and checked the service bars to see if he would get enough reception to complete a call to 911, and then dialed. The emergency response system had recently included a remarkable update to its services. They used his cell signal to pinpoint his location on a map and guided him through several miles of the Caribou-Targhee National Forest on a direct path to an ambulance at a nearby road. The waiting medics got to work bandaging Mike's wounds to slow the bleeding and loaded him aboard. They sped toward the Madison Memorial Hospital in Rexburg, Idaho, about 50 miles to the south as the crow flies. Once Mike arrived there, the staff cleaned his wounds and wheeled him into the X-ray station, where they examined the bones of his forearm. Fortunately for Mike, none of his arm bones were broken, and his wounds were closed with sutures and bandaged. Mike's wounds were noted to be several bites on his left forearm and tears in some of the muscle and skin from the sow tossing her head after she bit him. His left hand was also chewed up pretty good, but after receiving treatment, Mike was released to heal at home. Following Mike's attack, investigators made the trip to the GPS location of his attack. They really needed to know if they had a wounded grizzly on their hands, and would have to dispatch her, and possibly her cubs, if they determined she'd been wounded. Upon arriving at the attack site, they found Mike's hat that had been shaken from his head during the attack. They also found the cached deer carcass and the sow's tracks as she attacked Mike. The area was scoured for 6 hours while they searched for any evidence that the bullets fired from Mike's .44 Magnum had struck the sow or one of her cubs. The size of the pistol would make a hell of a wound, so there should be fur and blood spatter on the ground, but they found none. After determining Mike's shots had somehow missed striking the grizzly entirely, they determined she was likely not wounded. Given her attack was centered around defending a cached deer carcass, as well as protecting her 3 cubs, they deemed her attack a defensive one. They decided to take no action against the sow, given her actions or reactions were expected grizzly bear behavior given the circumstances. Mike eventually made a full recovery, but I could find no source indicating if he had ever returned to archery hunting. He was not charged with any violation resulting from the investigation of his attack. The 19,000 square mile area around Yellowstone National Park is said to host 757 grizzly bears, which are still listed as endangered. Many residents and some scientists state that the area is above maximum carrying capacity for grizzly bears, and that they are now spreading into areas of Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming that they've not been for decades. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. How do you think it's possible that Mike missed the bear with every single shot he fired from point-blank range? Do you think you would stand a chance of hitting the grizzly while shooting from that range? Is archery hunting in grizzly territory a risk you'd be willing to take? As prepared as Mike was for a run-in with a bear, what more could he have done to prevent or avoid it? The next time you're sneaking through the woods and you hear a twig snap, will the story of Mike's grizzly bear attack come back to your mind? I'll be glad to read your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it.
Twilight was in a stubborn retreat as the elk hunter moved slowly between towering lodgepole pines and dense stands of subalpine fir, his boots muffled by duff and fallen needles. To his left, dark patches of underbrush, massed scrub brush, and berry bushes heavy with late-season fruit. He paused, rifle raised, scanning the shadows, hoping to see an elk materialize. Suddenly the forest went still. A snap of a twig followed by a powerful shape blurring from the jack pines, clearing shrubs, and closing in on the hunter with blinding speed. The hunter jerked his rifle to his shoulder, squeezed the trigger, and hoped it was enough to stop the grizzly before it got to him. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. The North Antelope Flats area lies in eastern Idaho, within the Caribou-Targhee National Forest, in the broad mosaic of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. Here, 3 dominant tree species tower over the forest floor: lodgepole pine, Douglas fir, and subalpine fir. Amid the shade of these giants grow shrubs, such as snowbrush, willow, and serviceberry. Underneath and along ledges and creek cuts, fruit-bearing bushes cluster huckleberry, red-stem ceanothus, and low-growing chinkapin. The forest and flats are home to large herbivores. Elk roam the ridges and meadows. Moose frequent riparian willow pockets. Mule deer slip among pine stands, and even occasional bison wander the greater Yellowstone region. Predators around here include cougars patrolling the thick timber, gray wolves traversing ridgelines, and perhaps most impressive of all, grizzly bears that cover vast territories through this complex terrain. The mix of dense cover, fruit-laden shrubs, and bushy flats not only makes ideal habitat for numerous species, it also creates perfect terrain for close-range wildlife encounters. Now I want to take a minute to explain something about this location, as I'm very familiar with it. My family has hunted deer, elk, and moose here for over 30 years, and has watched as moose in particular have all but disappeared from the ecosystem. Old fire scars have grown back in dense jack pine stands, stretching for the better part of a mile in places, their low branches limiting visibility to only a few yards. This kind of terrain conceals any animals that shelter within. The elk hunter, whom we'll call Andy, had ventured into the North Antelope Flats area early that morning, his rifle slung and alertness high. He was alone, no hunting partner, no dog beside him, moving quietly through the thick timber in big game hunting mode. While he may have understood the risks of hunting in grizzly country, being in the wilderness drew him like a moth to flame. No source indicated Andy carried bear spray, instead opting to use his high-powered hunting rifle as his sole means of protection. Andy had to be aware of the recent spate of grizzly bear attacks and incidents in the area. Island Park has been ground zero in the conflict between the recovering species of bear and humans venturing into grizzly territory. Over the last 2 years, there have been several grizzlies who have met their fate at the muzzle of armed Idahoans, who have somewhat of a social penchant for firearms and tend to be very proactive in protecting themselves from the massive and dangerous predators. Beyond the attacks and incidents on record, one local report estimated 18 to 23 grizzlies live in the Island Park vicinity alone. Yet grizzlies in Idaho remain listed as threatened under the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and conservation strategies are in place to monitor and manage their populations. One news article reported increased bear encounters and cattle depredations in the Ashton Island Park region of the Caribou-Targhee National Forest during the summer. All of this underscores the shared landscape as human hunters and recreationalists enter deeper into bear country. The boundary between visitor and predator becomes thinner and tenuous. The morning of October 18, 2025, dawned crisp and quiet. Andy threaded his way through dense timber, carefully navigating under the canopy of lodgepole and Douglas fir, stepping through low shrubs and ceanothus bushes, shimmering with moisture. He was intent on the game, scanning for movement, hearing only his own footfalls and the rustle of shrub branches in the breeze. Then, without warning, the bear exploded unexpectedly. Emerging from thick underbrush, the adult male grizzly locked eyes on Andy and charged. Its stride was powerful and routed directly toward the hunter. Andy barely had time to raise his rifle, his heart pounding as the massive brown form bore down. He squeezed the trigger while the bear closed the gap. The first shot struck true, halting the charge momentarily. Andy, adrenaline surging, fired again. The bear collapsed before it reached him. In the quiet aftermath, Andy steadied his breath, retrieved his radio, and placed the call to the Fremont County Sheriff's Office, reporting the incident as soon as possible. The Idaho Fish and Game Team responded and conducted a full investigation, determining Andy acted in self-defense under the circumstances. Andy emerged from the woods without major injury, physically unscathed, though undoubtedly shaken. The bear, a healthy adult male grizzly, was killed before contact was made in a textbook close-range defense scenario. The official investigation confirmed that Andy's actions constituted lawful self-defense under Idaho wildlife law. There was no cached animal carcass noted, and given that the bear was a male, it was not protecting cubs. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, linked below, will give you ad-free early access to episodes, photos, and notes. And the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. In the Island Park area of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, grizzly bears can cover extremely large home ranges. Adult males may roam up to approximately 500 square miles. Across Idaho, grizzly bear populations are far lower than black bears. For example, one wildlife catalog puts Idaho's grizzly numbers in the range of 80 to 100, but with substantial uncertainty. It isn't clear how these numbers could be remotely accurate, given that the central part of the state is covered by the Frank Church Wilderness Area, along the River of No Return, the Salmon River. Its vast wilderness area likely makes a realistic population estimation a guess at best. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Could this encounter have been prevented if Andy had been moving with a partner rather than solo, thereby increasing detection of bear sign and reducing surprise? Would bear spray have prevented this attack, or would the time it takes to dispense it put Andy's life in jeopardy? Are you impressed with Andy's shooting ability, given the circumstances? I'm not sure if I would have been able to save my own life. I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. We release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to Idaho's Caribou-Targhee National Forest, near Mule Meadows. The town of Kilgore is about 25 miles west of an area mentioned many times on this channel, Island Park, Idaho. Mule Meadows is a stone's throw away from the Montana-Idaho border, depending on how far you can throw a stone. In the year 2024, there have been 3 grizzly-related attacks in the region since summer. The early fall of 2024 was a busy and chaotic time for grizzly bears, as they encountered people near Island Park. In September, an archery hunter was attacked by an adult male grizzly bear, west of Henry's Lake. The hunter, with a friend, was stalking elk when the bear attacked, knocking him down and biting him. Both hunters managed to fend off the bear using sidearms, and the injured hunter was evacuated to a medical facility for non-life-threatening injuries. In June, a resident near Island Park shot a young grizzly male that charged at his girlfriend near their property. Each of these encounters has been featured on an episode on this channel and is linked to below this video for your review. The Caribou-Targhee National Forest, stretching for over 2.63 million acres across Idaho and Wyoming, is known for its rugged mountains, dense forests, and rich biodiversity. The vast forests bordering the greater Yellowstone ecosystem provide a haven for a wide range of wildlife, from deer, elk, and moose, to apex predators like black bears, cougars, wolves, and grizzly bears. This landscape varies significantly from low-elevation valleys to towering peaks that reach over 10,000 feet. Forests are dense with lodgepole pines, Douglas firs, aspens, and shrubs, creating an ideal habitat for prey and predators. Grizzly bears are particularly active in this region during late fall as they prepare for hibernation, consuming large amounts of food to build up essential fat stores. On Saturday, October 26, 2024, an elk hunter whom we refer to as Steve was participating in one of his favorite pastimes. He was experienced in backcountry hunting and a great shot with his hunting rifle. This trip was intended to be a routine solo elk hunt through dense forest, where elk are commonly found in October. Equipped with standard hunting gear, including a rifle, the hunter knew the risks involved in grizzly bear country and was alert to potential dangers. Now is a great time to mention the hunting rifle Steve would be packing on his hunting trip. His rifle of choice was a 7mm .08, which is similar to a .308 Winchester. The .08 fires smaller bullets and has less muzzle energy. It is suited for medium-sized game like deer, is a favored varmint hunting rifle. This relatively underpowered rifle is a curious choice for elk hunting, and it is not the most favored gun to protect yourself from a charging grizzly. But if being charged by a grizzly could be anticipated, then every hunter would pack the most powerful firearm they could bring. As Steve hiked the hills and examined the trails for sign of elk, toward evening he found himself in a heavily forested area near Mule Meadows. This kind of country doesn't give its gold up without taking a comparable amount of energy and exertion. The bushes screening the southern slopes get tangled and difficult to pass through quietly. Considering they all grow short and wide, they make seeing anything concealed in their branches nearly impossible until you are danger close. As Steve maneuvered through thick brush, he pushed aside groups of branches as he passed by. He noticed a grizzly bear daybed dug into the duff of the forest, and then a few yards away he found another. As he crept through the brush, a sow grizzly broke out of some bushes a short distance away from him. They were only separated by a few yards, and Steve knew the grizzly would be upon him before he could do much to stop her. Steve was packing bear spray, but his high-powered hunting rifle was already in his hands. As the bear was bounding toward the hunter, he knew he didn't have time to hope she was only bluffing in her charge toward him. He whipped his rifle in her direction and hoped that he was unshaken enough to deliver a defensive round to her before she could reach him. As he squeezed the trigger, his rifle belched out a thunderous roar and billowed a puff of smoke as the sow was a mere 1 yard from the end of the barrel of his rifle. His initial shot struck the sow just below her right eye and dropped her in her tracks. As she struggled to regain her feet, Steve quickly worked the action of his rifle and got off a second shot at the bear, striking her behind the right shoulder, and then everything around him went quiet. It is nearly impossible to practice snap shooting with a hunting rifle under the pressure of being charged by a grizzly, but somehow Steve pulled it off when it mattered most. His bullet hit home and knocked the sow off her feet. Only a few minutes later, her body lay still as Steve tried to get his senses together. The intensity and terror of the past few seconds stimulated a rush of adrenaline that would take some time to subside. Realizing he was safe, Steve focused on reaching out to authorities to report the grizzly's death. The only means he had to do so was his cell phone, so he climbed the ridge above until he could receive sufficient service to place a call. The Clark County Sheriff's Office dispatcher helped notify the Idaho Department of Fish and Game, as well as local law enforcement. The officers converged to investigate Steve's testimony regarding the circumstances surrounding his attack. After taking Steve's statement and visiting the bear's carcass, officials concluded the man's account of the facts. They determined that Steve's killing of the sow was completed in self-defense, and that he would face no charges regarding its demise. The hunter indicated that he didn't notice the smell of a nearby carcass and didn't see any bear cubs anywhere near the attack site. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, linked below, will give you ad-free early access to our episodes, and the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. If you visit our Patreon site, you'll see attack photos, and pictures of the bear carcass involved in this episode are posted there for your review. Thanks to his quick response, the hunter avoided physical harm, a rarity in such close encounters with grizzlies. This incident underscores the dangers of solo hunting in areas where bears are actively foraging before winter. Officials expressed relief that the hunter escaped injury, though this latest incident highlights the need for continued bear safety education and preparation. The Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, which includes Caribou-Targhee National Forest, is home to a significant population of grizzly bears, with estimates ranging between 700 and 800 grizzly bears. While bear attacks remain rare, interactions between humans and bears are increasing as bear populations grow and humans venture deeper into wilderness areas. Bears in this area are typically active from March through early November, with late fall seeing increased foraging activity as bears prepare for hibernation. The Idaho Department of Fish and Game recommends several precautions to minimize risks when venturing into bear country, including carrying bear spray and having it accessible at all times. Avoid hunting or hiking solo whenever possible. Be vigilant for signs of bear activity, such as tracks, scat, or animal carcasses. Store food and garbage securely, at least 200 yards away from camp and 10 feet off the ground. Make noise, especially when visibility is low, to avoid surprising bears. This intense encounter near Mule Meadows is a testament to the challenges of navigating bear country, especially during fall. The hunter's quick thinking and preparedness saved his life, but it also raises questions about safety practices in bear-inhabited regions. After reviewing the facts surrounding this attack, I'm left with a few questions for you. Could this incident have been avoided with additional bear safety measures in place? What further steps can be taken to ensure human and bear safety as bear populations continue to grow? How can we better protect hunters and outdoor enthusiasts in grizzly country? I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it.
Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to familiar territory and a place close to my heart. Island Park is an incorporated town in northeast Idaho. It's only 500 feet wide and boasts the longest main street of any city at 33 miles long. The elevation here is 6,293 feet above sea level, making it the highest city in Idaho. Peaks surrounding the town reach over 10,000 feet high, which gives you an idea of how rigorous and demanding the terrain can be. According to the Köppen climate classification system, this area is very near the subarctic climate classification, with long cold winters and short, warm summers. Island Park is exceptional compared to areas of similar altitude in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, as it gets around 30 inches of rainfall each year, nearly tripling surrounding areas. This rainfall allows dense growths of evergreens like lodgepole pine and Douglas fir. In the fall, deciduous trees like Rocky Mountain maple, alder, birch, and quaking aspen trees dazzle observers with their red and golden leaves. The ample rainfall allows dense thickets of western chokecherry, golden currant, serviceberry, and thimbleberry bushes to offer up their sweet perfection in season. Along the numerous ponds, you'll find willow and alder bushes potentially hiding one of the many dangerous animals that call this place home. Near Henry's Lake lies the Caribou-Targhee National Forest with its expansive wilderness that spans parts of Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. There's abundant wildlife here, with mule deer, elk, and moose commonly spotted. The predators here include bobcats, black bears, coyotes, cougars, wolves, and grizzly bears. Its remote privacy has allowed grizzlies to flourish here, and this year has been a very busy one when it comes to grizzlies. Local cattlemen have reported many of their cattle falling prey to hungry grizzlies. The moose population has been decimated by a tick infestation, according to Idaho Fish and Game officers, but ticks aren't the only things that kill moose. In May of 2024, a sow grizzly and her cubs began displaying aggressive tendencies toward people. They'd become food conditioned and had lost their fear and tendency to avoid civilization. The sow and her cubs were put down because they represented a danger to humans. On June 6, 2024, a man in Island Park was forced to kill a charging grizzly as it bore down on his girlfriend, and that episode will be out this Thursday. According to the Idaho Fish and Game, this year is the first year grizzlies have been documented to be west of Interstate 15 and are clearly and rapidly expanding their territory. Around 7 a.m. on Sunday, September 1, 2024, 2 elk hunters were sneaking through the timber near Divide Creek Road. They were archery hunters, which is most successfully done in camouflage, and silently or quietly progressing through the forest or along meadows. Archery hunters frequently wear animal scents, like skunk or elk urine, to mask their own. To blend in with the forest even more, they'll often use sound-producing devices known as calls that will mimic the sound of bugling bull elk rivals, lovesick cow elk searching for a mate or a herd, or a lost and panicked calf trying to find its mother. The archery hunters' identities have not been made public as of the date of the production of this video, so we will refer to them as Bill and Ted. Now, these 2 hunters were experienced archery hunters, and they knew they were venturing into dangerous country, but could not have known to expect grizzly bears in this area. The ferocious predators have been observed on the east side of Interstate 15 connecting Idaho and Montana, but not yet on the west side. As far as the hunters knew, they were not in grizzly bear country. Just the same, they both packed powerful sidearms, which is best practice in the rugged and remote mountains of western states. As Bill and Ted made their way through dense lodgepole pines, they were likely bugling to locate bull elk and mewing like lost cow elk in an attempt to find a herd, or even a straggler. A common bugling strategy is one hunter calls, while the other positions himself along a predictable path to intercept the incoming game animal. If they can fool the forest king into bow range, they might get a shot and harvest some healthy meat. If not, they reboot the plan and try again. It isn't clear if they were drawing in any elk, but one thing is for certain, a very large male grizzly bear had heard the dinner bell and was coming in on a rope. The archery hunters were taken completely by surprise by the grizzly's thundering charge from a few dozen yards away. Grizzly bear paws have a thick rubber-like sole that distributes their weight and allows for near silence as they stalk. As the hungry boar broke through the brush, it must have caught Ted in its vision first, as it headed directly toward him. In the confusion of a massive gray-brown blur streaking through the green and tan forest, the men yelled to ward off the bear as it closed in on Ted. Both hunters pulled their sidearms from their holsters and hoped the grizzly would veer off in a bluff charge. But, as in many bear attack stories, that's not what happened. The angry boar slapped Ted to the ground after the first of several shots rang out from the hunter's pistols. Despite having several rounds sent in its direction, and likely at least a few through its body, the grizzly bit onto Ted's arm and tore at his flesh. Bill's shots may have been the deciding factor in ending the attack, given he was only a short distance from the bear as it mauled Ted. After enough hot lead had been sent its way, the wounded bear backed off. Its attack on Ted had been curtailed by the damage and incapacitation imparted by the defensive rounds fired by the hunters. The grizzly spun and disappeared into the brush, leaving the men shaken and Ted bleeding and in pain. Listening as the bear broke a retreat through the brush, Bill approached his hunting partner to assess the damage done to his arm. Both men retrieved their cell phones and dialed 911 in near unison to reach out for help. The dispatcher contacted emergency medical helicopter personnel, and a rescue plan was underway. Ted was gathered up and flown to Eastern Idaho Regional Medical Center in Idaho Falls. His wounds were considered serious, but not life-threatening, due to the preparation and reaction of Ted and his hunting partner. The Idaho Fish and Game, Fremont County Sheriff's deputies, and Caribou-Targhee National Forest Emergency Medical Service teams wasted no time in sending responders to interview both hunters and begin fact and evidence gathering around the incident. Grizzlies are federally protected in the lower 48, and each time one is killed, the circumstances surrounding it must be looked into. The IFG determined that Bill and Ted's grizzly encounter was a surprise event at a close distance. The hunters were found to have acted in self-defense and would not be charged with any violation due to their actions. Idaho Fish and Game Supervisor Matt Perrin commented that he was hoping for a speedy recovery from the injuries and trauma for both hunters, and remarked how wonderful their family members were. While investigators were at the attack scene, and after a brief search, the bear's carcass was located and its death was confirmed. The carcass was recovered and removed as evidence for further analysis. To understand the causes of the attack, investigators searched the area and found no animal carcass that was cached by the grizzly. It was a boar, so it was not protecting cubs. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, linked below, will give you ad-free early access to our episodes, and the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. Authorities indicate this is the first grizzly bear attack on a human in the area this year. In the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, there are reportedly an estimated 1,900 grizzly bears in an area of 18,000 square miles. This means grizzly bear density is around one grizzly for every 9.5 square miles. To give you an idea of that area, take a part of your city that is 3 miles long and 3 miles wide and drop a grizzly bear in the middle of it. For every 30 miles you travel down a gravel road on your mountain bike, you may be traversing the boundaries of 10 grizzly bear territories. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. What do you think archery hunters can do to avoid grizzly bear attacks and still enjoy bow hunting? Is this attack another case of two apex predators doing what they do? Does this attack remind you of the attack on Ronnie Leeming and his father, or the two Idaho archery hunters that occurred almost exactly 11 months before this one? I've linked to both episodes in the video article below for your review. I'll gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it.
Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider clicking on the like button and clicking on the bell icon. We'll help you know when we post our new episodes. Posting our video links to your social media profiles furthers awareness, and it's fun. We've slashed our prices in our merch store, linked below, so check out the bargains there while you shop. As a member of our human community, remember to adventure bravely and be careful out there, especially in bear country.